In 2018, the God of War franchise was rebooted to near universal acclaim. Even people that didn't really play the original games, like myself, found themselves absolutely in love with the new world that had been crafted. Fast forward 5 years later, and here we are on the cusp of the sequel, and today we're going to be talking about it. My name's Cowboy. Big thanks to the folks over at PlayStation for a review code of the game, and this is my review in progress of God of War Ragnarok. Now, I say review in progress because even now I've only had a chance to explore 3 of the zones outside of the starter zone that you're looking at right now. There is a lot going on in this game. There are a lot of hidden treasures, a lot of little side paths, different areas you can peek in and out of. And just the way I play games, I like to go as in-depth as possible. I like to find every secret that I can possibly reach at that given time. And the downside of that, obviously, is that there's a lot of the game I haven't had a chance to experience so far. But regardless of that, let's talk about what I have had a chance to experience, which is still quite a lot at roughly 25 hours played. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is going to be the gameplay, because to me, that's the most important thing with a game. You know, a game could have beautiful visuals and a great story, but if it's not fun to play, I'm not going to keep playing it because I want a game and not a movie at the end of the day. Thankfully, the gameplay here is phenomenal, though. They very much expanded on what we got in 2018, so a couple areas have been streamlined a bit. There's been a couple of additions that just kind of make things flow a lot better. One of the biggest ones, in my opinion, being that we have both of our weapons pretty much at the start of the game. You start with the axe similar to last time, but you get the Blades of Chaos within like the first hour. Basically, you just got to go back to your house and grab them. Whereas in the 2018 God of War, we didn't get the Blades of Chaos until like the second half of the game, which was a long time playing with one weapon. On top of that, we have varied shields now. So shortly after you get like out of the starting gate here, your shield ends up getting damaged, and then they give you 2 separate shields you can choose from initially. The idea is there's going to be a parry shield where you can parry and then double tap to do like a shield punch, which can stun. Or alternatively, you have a tower shield variation where the idea is you'll keep blocking with it to build up charge on it, and then you can end up doing a shield slam. And as you progress through the game, there's even other variations of shields you're going to be able to find. So we have updates to our offensive capabilities. We have updates to our defensive capabilities. The relics make a return, and those are a little bit more varied this time. I remember like finding a lot of them really late game back in the 2018 God of War, and this time I have right now I think 3 where I'm at in the game. So you don't get a ton early on, but you do get a fair variety of them. Another new thing is we have a variation on our Spartan Rage. So currently I have 2 different Spartan Rages unlocked, one that's more of a defensive option, one that's more of an offensive option. But so the point I'm making is pretty much every system from the 2018 God of War has been expanded in some capacity to just be better than it was. Speaking of expansions, one of the biggest is in terms of followers. Whereas before, Atreus was very much just like a, press a button and he attacks. He has a whole ass skill tree. There are portions of the game where, you're not going to be playing Kratos. You're going to be playing him instead. And so the first time you play him, you actually unlock his full skill tree, which is more than just his bow and arrow stuff. He has melee combos, parry combos, dodge combos, all that stuff. And he'll actually carry those over when you go back to playing the dad and boy combo, and he's being controlled by AI. On top of that, there are portions of the game where you have like temporary followers that are going to come along, and you're able to fully spec out their trees, which I found was kind of like, whoa. So I don't know if maybe later on we get to a point and we're able to just fully pick like which follower we want, because letting you spec out a tree for a temp follower, that seems pretty intense, So pretty much every aspect of the gameplay here has been expanded in some capacity when it comes to combat. Now, at the same time, one addition that I found myself not as fond of the more I experienced it was, now that we have sequences of the game where we play as Kratos and then sequences where we play as Atreus, the game frequently puts you down like set gameplay paths. And what I mean by this is you could be exploring a zone and then you go back to the hub, events play out, and then all of a sudden it's going to be Atreus time for the next 2.5 hours. And then, after you get through Atreus time, then it's going to be, time for Kratos and Atreus again, or maybe just Kratos. And then when you get through that, we're going to go back to Atreus time for another 2.5, 3 hours. And I understand why it was done. And when you play the game, it completely makes sense in the narrative and the story and why you're being kind of pushed down these gameplay paths. At the same time, I feel like it gives a sense of less freedom compared to the previous game, where I felt like we could constantly just, go all over and do whatever we wanted. Now there's times where I'm like, I really feel like I want to explore, but instead I'm going to play through this portion of the Atreus story for, like I said, it's pretty large chunks, like 3 hours. So it's like, okay, let me get through this. And, it's not that it's bad. It's just that, I don't know, I liked having the freedom. Now, one thing I will say that I was not a fan of at all, I was doing side content in one particular zone, and I've been playing on Give Me God of War, so obviously all the boss encounters are quite challenging. And while doing this side content, I basically finished the quest, was like, all right, I got to get out of here. I don't belong in this zone. Things here are too strong. I'm going to leave. And then as I tried to leave, leaving that side content would trigger a boss fight. And unless you beat that boss fight, you could not leave. And that bothered me quite a bit, honestly. Like, I understand like progression-based bosses, like the capital in Elden Ring doesn't get covered in ash until after you've beaten Malekith. But imagine if you decided to imagine if you visited the Erd Tree and then the game basically told you, oh, until Millennia is dead, you don't get to leave here. You're going to stay here until you beat her. That's what this felt like, because it was optional side content, and I kind of just wandered in, was like, okay, this is a cool quest. I'll do this. And then I got through the quest and was like, great, I'm going to leave. And the game was like, just kidding. No, you're not. Surprise boss fight. And until you beat this, you don't get to leave. So that definitely got under my skin. The idea that I essentially got soft locked behind a boss fight, because my other options would have been lower the difficulty, which I'm too stubborn to do that, or alternatively reload a previous save from before I started that quest, which would have lost me about 2 hours of progress. So moving on from there, though, talking about the world and kind of environment, graphics, details, and all that. I really like the worlds so far, and even worlds that we visited in the previous game, we're approaching them like from different angles this time around. So, for example, Alfheim is very different from how it was the last time we visited it, and that's something that I really appreciate here, is because they very much could have essentially just had like very similar zones with a couple things switched up, but instead we're seeing big changes in zones that we had previously visited, and that's you don't see developers do that all that often. So I think they did a really good job in environmental design here, really kind of giving you a variety of biomes to explore, and the visuals in some of these zones are just like, while the characters are talking, I'm just like panning the camera and looking around, and I'm like, this shit looks good. So not only did they make the zones diverse and expand on them from the previous game, but they also made sure that when you go to these zones and you're spending time and exploring and looking around, it doesn't feel like you're just checking stuff off on a list. Like, they are beautifully designed areas for sure. On a lesser note, music hasn't really stood out to me all that much. I know that sounds kind of like a weird call out, but I can't think of a time where I was like, oh man, that boss music was insane. The sound design has been good. The fight sounds have been pretty crisp. I will say Mimir has gotten under my skin a couple times, because you carry Mimir's head on your waist now, and playing on the higher difficulties, obviously I'm dying a fair amount, and so I had to listen to him just be like, brother, get up, brother, and then I would die, brother, get up, die again, brother, get up, and I'm like, bro, stop. If I have to hear you call me, if I have to hear brother get up one more time, I swear to God, I'm punting this head off a mountain. But that's at the end of the day, it's not Mimir's fault that I picked the hardest difficulty and I kept dying, so I can't be that upset at that. But the sound design itself is really good. So sound design, world design, A's across the board in regards to that. Talking about the story a little bit, and I'm not going to go into any story spoilers, but I will say I like the story this time around significantly more than the story in the last game. And I think part of this might be bias because I have a son now, and 5 years ago I didn't. So, given my son isn't a teenager like Atreus is. But it's kind of interesting seeing the father-son dynamic in this game. And Atreus is obviously much older, and he wants to be treated and respected as an adult. And his father had secrets, his mother had secrets, he has secrets, but that's not okay with Kratos. As far as Kratos is concerned, first and foremost, Atreus is his son rather than him being his own person. And so you have a lot of emphasis this time on the relationship between them. And you can see, how emotionally straining it is to Kratos to an extent. I don't think that's something we got in the last game. It's something that personally I've found myself connecting with a lot more than in the first game. Like in the first game, there were so many jokes. People were just, dad of boy, and because Kratos just boy, get in the boat, and Atreus very much felt like a side character on Kratos' journey that occasionally had a couple things that he would speak up and say, but he I don't know, to me he felt very much like a side character rather than a main character, and he's meant to be a main character, and here he absolutely feels like a main character. And the dialogue that go between the two of them, like it has truly been a joy. There's been I've had a couple good belly laughs so far. Brock is fucking hilarious as always, just dumbass blunt Brock, just saying whatever comes to mind, whatever pops in his noggin, he spits on out. So yeah, you'll get plenty of that, rest assured. But so without going into like elements of the story or the characters or anything like that, because I think these are games that are, they are fairly narrative, and I think they're best experienced either on your own or through the eyes of the fantastic Let's Play series that I'm currently creating. But yeah, I mean, in terms of just like, is it a good story? Are you going to get invested in it? Fuck yeah, you are. And if you have a son, oh man, you're going to get super invested. Like, honestly, I'm actually really excited to talk to my brother-in-law about this game, because he has 2 kids that are like going through those teenage years right now. So I can't wait to like pick his brain, because he has like a 16-year-old and a 13-year-old, and Atreus is pretty much like right in the middle of that, I think, in this game. I think he's supposed to be like 13, but I'll be curious to see how that works out. Moving on from there, though, let's talk about accessibility. Oh man. Now I know you're probably like, what? Accessibility in a review? Why do I care about this? Y'all have no idea. They pumped so much quality of life options into this game. And so for a little backstory, so outside of this channel, I have a master's degree in human factors and systems design. I've worked on interfaces and user interfaces for well over 10 years. Like, it's basically my second job. So I do a lot of like UI design, user testing, stuff like that. And man, they knocked it out of the fucking park with this. Like, there are so many just nice quality of life options. And I mean, obviously you have accessibility stuff that are going to help people that have challenges in playing games. Things like changing the contrast of characters, different sound cues or tactile cues, stuff like that. But even just basic stuff, like I have it set up so that anytime I walk up to loot, Kratos just picks it up. If I walk up to a healing thing or a rage thing, he just steps on it. You can change a bunch of different buttons around. You can you have custom different buttons you can use on the touchpad. There's just so much customization that you can just kind of tweak your play style. Oh, you want a black outline around the HUD? You can slap that on. Just little things that you wouldn't typically think of, but once you experience them, you're like, oh, this is nice. And it's not something that's going to blow you away. But there's enough of them that like it's going to genuinely improve every single person that plays this game needs to go into the settings menu and just tweak shit to be exactly what they want, because they spent a lot of time there. And it was a joy just seeing like how much I could customize the game to just fit what I wanted. That's something that you do not see in a lot of games. And really, really big fucking round of applause to the devs for that, because it's not common. Now, all the praise aside, I do want to touch on a couple things that I experienced that I wasn't as much of a fan of. Now, given I don't have the day one patch, so a lot of this stuff may end up getting fixed up. In fact, in the patch notes, they said there was going to be tuning to like combat, progression, navigation, camera, stuff like that. So pretty broad stroke bug fixes across the board. And a lot of the stuff I experienced was fairly minor and may be included in that. But regardless, I wanted to call it out. Hands down the most annoying one. So you're supposed to be able to hit the left side of the touchpad to bring up your map. That shit works 30% of the time if I'm lucky. I can like try the top left corner of the touchpad, the bottom left corner, all the way on the side. Half the time it brings up the map, half the time it just brings up my character menu. And that shit was infuriating because I would have loved to just like straight up map a different button to it. And I could not find a spot to map that, which is kind of weird because, I just gave the game so much praise for the accessibility options it had, but just remapping a button to dedicate to the map, I could not do, which was very odd, especially in a game like this where I'm constantly pulling up the map and, looking at check marks and seeing what kind of loot I may not have or what I'm still missing in a particular area. We already touched on getting soft lock in a side quest. That one really got me. Another one that happened, and this was in a rather long episode, but I was just free roaming in a zone, and I had a puzzle essentially bug out. It was like a physics-based puzzle. You're supposed to swing this pendulum type thing. The pendulum turned, and so I spent legit 10 minutes of a Let's Play episode like trying to make this puzzle work, and I'm losing my mind looking at it. I'm like, I know for a fact I'm doing this right. I don't know why this isn't working. Like, this does not make sense. There's no other way to possibly solve this. And then after basically reloading a checkpoint, so it just reoriented the object so it wasn't at a slant again, I solved the puzzle within like 10 seconds. So that another thing that just kind of got under my skin a little bit. And most of the janky puzzles, they happen later in the game in the Vanaheim region. Eventually you get a runic sigil type skill where it's like you put out the sigil and you can expand it and then imbue it with elements, and the element will transfer to stuff the sigil's touching. And those puzzles in particular, some of them are clean cut and good. Some of them get pretty fucking janky. So that's one area I'm really hoping that area gets touched up in the patch notes because compared to the puzzles in other zones, the rune puzzles have not been the smoothest. So nothing big, obviously, but enough that I did want to call it on out. So all in all, what's the verdict? What is the verdict? Honestly, this is a fantastic game. I do think that the little issues are enough that I think I would put this at like a 9.5. Potentially a 10, but that depends on like a day one patch because a lot of this stuff there's an immense world here and there's an immense world to love, but it's the little tiny bugs that I think like just nip you in the back of the head over and over and over. Like the fact that like when I press the button and I want to open my map, half the time the map doesn't open. It doesn't seem like a big thing, and it's not a big thing, but it's something that'll get under your skin and it'll just slowly eat away at you. And you're like, I just want my map. I just want the damn map to work when I press the button that the game said I had to press for the map. That shit'll get you. And then the stuff like being locked in a side quest until you beat a boss. That's just that's a straight up design thing that I would disagree with. But I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, this game is going to just knock it out of the park for most people. I'm still having an absolute blast playing it. Don't let a couple things that I found negative dissuade you at all. This is, absolutely going to be a game of the year contender. Yeah, I mean, God, I'm at 39 episodes right now on the Let's Play as of time of this review being recorded. And like I said, outside of the starter zone, I've only visited 3 zones. So like, this is a beefy game. This is a very beefy game. So either way, I'm going to wrap things up. That Let's Play series is going to be starting a little bit closer to release. I'll probably be going pretty aggressive with it. Probably like 3 episodes a day or something, just because I have so many on deck already. So it'll be kind of close to how it was with Elden Ring, where we were just putting out endless amounts of content for y'all. So either way, thanks for stopping on by and checking out the review. Let me know. What do you guys think? Is this going to stack up against Elden Ring for Game of the Year? I mean, Sony IPs usually do pretty damn well, and I love Elden Ring, but it does disappoint me that there's still performance issues on the PC, even this far after launch. That's not it's not something I'm too fond of, but either way, that's a different discussion for a different time. So, regardless, thanks for coming on by. Let me know your thoughts down below, and otherwise, hopefully you'll come on back and I see you for the Let's Play.